The first sensation was the cold. Not a gentle chill, but a violent, invasive cold that bypassed skin and flesh to clamp itself directly onto bone. It was a living thing, the cold of the deep Pacific, and it was trying to kill her. Every wave was a sledgehammer, a chaotic, indifferent fist that lifted her, slammed her, and tried to drive her under. Salt water, inhaled in a panicked gasp, burned in her lungs, a fire fighting the ice in her veins. Her world had shrunk to the rhythmic agony of her own body, the screaming protest of her shoulders with every stroke, the leaden ache in her legs as she kicked against a current that felt as solid as concrete, the rasp of her own breathing, loud and desperate against the roar of Hurricane Isadora, and the constant, terrifying bump of the waterproof dive bag against her hip. Inside that bag was a vial of liquid no bigger than her thumb. It was a miracle called Neurogenics V. It was hope. It was the only thing that mattered. Beneath her, the blackness was absolute, a void. She refused to think about what moved within it. The local fishermen told stories, tales of the landlords, the great white sharks that patrolled the channel between Sandcinder Island and the mainland. Thinking of them was a luxury she couldn't afford. Thinking was the enemy. All that was left was the mantra, a desperate prayer timed to her strokes. For Leo. Kick. For Leo. Breathe. For Leo. The bag bumped her again. Hope. 7 miles of furious, shark-infested water separated her from her brother. She was halfway there, and she was dying. 12 hours earlier. The lights in the small island house didn't just go out, they were murdered. A violent flicker, a buzz of dying electricity, and then a profound, suffocating darkness, broken only by the frantic strobing of lightning outside. The ensuing silence was heavier than the hurricane's roar. Maya Castillo clicked on a battery-powered lantern, its beam cutting a shaky circle of light in the living room. It illuminated the face of her 10-year-old brother, Leo, who lay on the sofa, wrapped in every blanket they owned. His skin was pale, his dark hair plastered to his forehead with a feverish sweat. A tremor, not from the storm's chill, but from the storm in his own nervous system, shook his small frame. "Is the storm making the stars shake, Maya?" he whispered, his voice a fragile thread against the tempest. Maya forced a smile that felt like cracking porcelain. She knelt beside him, placing a hand on his forehead. "No, buddy, the stars are fine. Just a little turbulence down here. We're okay." Her calm was a lie. A necessary, desperate lie. Inside, a cold terror clawed at her. The island's clinic, a glorified first aid station run by a semi-retired GP, had lost its generator hours ago. The ferry, their only lifeline, had been suspended yesterday, its docks likely splintered timber by now. They were marooned on a 25-square-mile rock being pummeled by the worst storm in a century. And the clock was ticking. Leo had rapid-onset neurodegenerative ataxia, Rona, a cruel, lightning-fast disease that was methodically unplugging him from his own body. The standard maintenance meds in her bag were just a stopgap, a finger in a dam that was about to burst. But there was hope. A new drug, an experimental gene therapy called Neurogenics V, had been granted emergency FDA approval just last week. A single dose, administered within a critical 48-hour window, had been shown in trials to not just slow, but halt the progression of Rona. Leo's dose-his one and only shot was sitting in a specialized refrigerator at St. Jude's Regional Medical Center on the mainland, 7 miles away, an impossible distance. His treatment window had opened 6 hours ago. She had 42 hours left to perform a miracle. She retreated to the kitchen, the one room with a signal for the satellite phone. The connection crackled, a duet of static and wind. On the other end, old Dr. Evans sounded defeated. "The clinic's taking on water, Maya. The roof is gone from the west wing. There's nothing I can do. You're the ICU nurse. You know his needs better than anyone." The call ended, leaving Maya in the roaring silence. She had the number for St. Jude's. She knew the medicine was there. It was a beacon in the dark. All she had to do was cross the monster that lay between them. She looked out the window, at the black, churning sea. The waves were mountains, rising and falling in the flashes of lightning. Her expression, framed by the chaos, hardened from fear into a terrifying resolve. The world had presented her with an impossible problem. She would become an impossible solution. The first wall she hit was made of protocol. It had a name, Dr. Alistair Finch. After 10 minutes of agonizing hold music battling the sat phone's static, She was patched through to the hospital administrator on call. His voice was smooth, polished, and utterly devoid of urgency. It was the voice of a man looking at a spreadsheet while the world burned. St. Jude's, Dr. Finch speaking. Dr. Finch, my name is Maya Castillo. My brother, Leo Castillo, is on San Cinder Island. His dose of Neurogenics V is at your facility. Dr. Center 2. Alan, his neurologist, arranged everything. Her words came out in a rush, a desperate torrent. Ah, yes, Miss Castillo. Finch's tone was placating, the kind one uses on a hysterical child. I want to assure you we are in the middle of a major civil emergency, but all hospital assets are secure. The medication is safe in our specialty pharmacy's temperature-controlled unit. The word asset struck her like a slap. I don't care if it's secure, I need to get it. His treatment window is closing. Every hour matters. A soft chuckle came through the phone. It was the most infuriating sound she had ever heard. Ma'am, getting it is quite impossible. I'm sure you can understand. We can't simply hand over an experimental biologic to a civilian. It requires a specialized cold chain transport, a certified medical courier, and must be administered in a clinical setting by a credentialed neurologist. Hospital policy and, frankly, federal law are unambiguous on this. There is no transport, she screamed, the sound swallowed by a gust of wind that rattled the house to its foundations. The hurricane destroyed the docks. The Coast Guard isn't flying. An unfortunate circumstance, certainly, Finch said, his calm unwavering, but a circumstance that does not supersede institutional liability. Releasing a Schedule V experimental compound during a natural disaster without a documented chain of custody? Well, you're a nurse, Miss Castillo. You can imagine the legal and regulatory exposure. My hands are tied. I'm not just a civilian, I'm a registered nurse. I can administer the drug. I can maintain the cold chain. For God's sake, this is his only chance. Your credentials, while admirable, do not authorize you to act as a transport agent for an experimental pharmaceutical, nor do they indemnify this hospital from the consequences of deviating from established FDA trial protocols, he recited, his words a pre-written script of non-commitment. We will, of course, hold the dose for you. We'll even file for an extension with the manufacturer, citing force majeure. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a hospital to run. The line went dead. Maya stared at the satellite phone in her hand, her knuckles white. He had spoken of liability, of protocol, of force majeure. He had used every word in the world except the one that mattered. Leo. She felt a surge of pure, undiluted rage. Fine, if the hospital wouldn't help, she'd go to the source. She scrolled through her contacts, her fingers trembling, and found the number for the Patient Access Department at Viridian Pharmaceuticals. The name itself felt like a sick joke. The second wall she hit was made of profit. It had a voice that was sharp, articulate, and as cold as the ocean floor. Her name was Evelyn Reed. After navigating another infuriating phone tree, Maya was connected to the vice president. Evelyn Reed. The voice was brisk, no nonsense. Maya launched into her story again, forcing her voice to remain steady, fighting back the hysteria that threatened to consume her. She explained the storm, the island, the ticking clock. Miss Castillo, thank you for your call, Reed began, a chillingly sterile opening. We are aware of the situation. Your brother, patient C, 1138, has been flagged in our system due to the transport disruption. C-1138. A designation, a number, not a 10-year-old boy who loved puzzles of the solar system. Please, Maya begged, swallowing her pride. Can you authorize St. Jude's to release the dose to me? Just give them the word. I can get there. I will find a way. A pause. I'm afraid that's not how our compassionate use program is structured, Reed said, her tone unchanging. The integrity of the product and, more importantly, the fidelity of the trial data are paramount. Neurogenics V is not just a medicine, Miss Castillo. It is the result of a $1.2 billion investment. It is a cornerstone of our neurological portfolio. An unbroken cold chain and a documented chain of custody are non-negotiable. Maya's mind reeled. Are you talking about your portfolio while my brother is dying? I am talking, Reed said, her voice sharpening slightly, about the protocols that ensure this drug can one day save thousands of children. We cannot risk compromising the integrity of the entire Phase 4 trial for a single, unfortunate outlier case. It is a matter of the greater good. The data we collect from every single administration is priceless. The greater good? Maya finally snapped, the words tearing from her throat. The greater good doesn't mean a damn thing to my brother if he's not here to see it. He's not an outlier. He's a child. Our legal department will be in contact with St. Jude's to discuss logistics and potential rescheduling once the storm abates, Reed said, steamrolling over Maya's plea. Viridian Pharmaceuticals wishes your family the best during this challenging time. The click of the disconnected line was like a gunshot in the quiet room. She had been beaten back by bureaucracy and now by capitalism. Two monolithic, unfeeling systems had politely and rationally sentenced her brother to death. There was one last hope. The people who were supposed to save you when all else failed. Her fingers shaking, she dialed the U.S. Coast Guard's public emergency line. She was patched through the storm-tossed ether to the local station commander. The third and final wall was made of reason, and it was the most heartbreaking of all. Commander Eva Rostova's voice was different. It was firm, professional, but laced with genuine strain and sympathy. In the background, Maya could hear the howl of the wind over a radio and the shouted commands of a crew working in crisis mode. Ma'am, this is Commander Rostova. I understand your situation, and believe me, my heart goes out to you. Her voice was weary. But I cannot, I repeat, cannot authorize a rescue flight or a cutter sortie in a Category 4 hurricane. We are registering sustained winds of 100 knots, with gusts up to 140. It would be a suicide mission. I cannot risk the lives of my crew. It's only 7 miles, Maya pleaded, the last of her hope fraying. A Jayhawk helicopter could be there and back in 15 minutes? In these conditions, a Jayhawk would be torn apart by rotor turbulence and unpredictable downdrafts before it got a mile offshore, Rostova countered, her voice patient but firm. The voice of someone who intimately understood the physics of death. The channel is a meat grinder right now, ma'am. It's not just the waves. We have reports of shipping containers, boats torn from their moorings, entire trees. It's a debris field. We will be the first ones there as soon as there's a break in the weather. I give you my word on that. A break in the weather might be too late, Maya whispered, defeated. A heavy sigh came over the line. It was a sigh of genuine frustration, not dismissal. I know, Rostova said softly. I'm sorry. The call ended. That was it. The final door had closed. The system, in all its logical, well-meaning, and self-serving forms, had failed. Medical protocol, corporate liability, and government prudence had aligned to form a perfect, impenetrable cage. On the mainland, in a dark and quiet police precinct, Officer Ben Carter took off his headset. He had been monitoring the Coast Guard channel, a standard procedure during a major storm. He'd heard Maya's entire, desperate plea. He knew the Castillo family. Remembered Maya from high school, a fierce, stubborn soccer goalie who never gave up. The clinical, detached refusals he'd just overheard made his stomach turn. Feeling a profound sense of helplessness, he opened his digital log and typed 2247, call overheard on USCG channel. Civilian caller, Maya Castillo, on San Cinder is, requesting emergent evac for 10Y, oh brother, Leo Castillo, critical medical. Request denied by USCG, St. Quote. Jude's Med, Viridian Pharma due to Hurricane Isadora. No transport available, no further action. He stared at the words on the screen. It felt like typing an obituary. He didn't know it yet, but he had just written the first sentence of a story that was about to shake the world. The eye of the hurricane arrived just before dawn. The apocalyptic wind died down to an unnerving whistling gale. The rain slowed to a drizzle. An eerie, bruised twilight fell over the island, the sky a sickly shade of purple and gray. It was a temporary reprieve, a breath held by a monster. Maya stood in the pre-dawn quiet, watching Leo sleep. His breathing was shallower now. The clock on the satellite phone was a merciless tyrant. 30 hours left. Her mind was a maelstrom of the voices she'd heard. Protocol, liability, the greater good, outlier case, suicide mission. Our hands are tied. Their hands, she thought, a cold fury solidifying in her gut. Their hands are tied, but mine aren't. They had left her with no options, so she would create one, an insane one, a suicidal one, but it was hers. She walked to the garage, the air thick with the smell of salt and damp earth. Hanging on a peg on the wall was a ghost of her father, his old triathlon wetsuit, a pair of fins, a bright yellow, waterproof dive bag. He had been a man who believed you could conquer any distance if your will was strong enough. He'd taught her to swim in the very channel that now held her prisoner, taught her to respect the currents, to read the water. The idea, which had been a flicker of insane fantasy, now blazed into a concrete plan. She made one last call, to her best friend Sarah, a fellow nurse on the mainland. Her voice was calm, eerily so. "Sarah, I need a favor, the biggest one I'll ever ask." "Maya, oh my God, are you okay? The storm?" "I'm fine. Listen to me. I'm coming over. I need you to get the Neurogenics V for me." A stunned silence. "What? How? Maya, that's insane." "Just be ready," Maya said, her voice ablade. "I need you at St. Jude's in about 3 hours. Go to the 3rd floor, near the specialty pharmacy. Pull a fire alarm. Cause a scene. I have my old hospital ID. I know the layout. I just need a window. 90 seconds is all it will take." Sarah's horrified gasp was her only answer before Maya ended the call. There was no time for debate. She pulled on the wetsuit. It was cold and tight, a second skin of grim purpose. She took a small, laminated photo of Leo from her wallet, the one where he was grinning, missing his 2 front teeth, and tucked it into a Ziploc bag before zipping it into an inner pocket of the suit. It lay against her heart. She checked the seals on the empty dive bag, cinching it tight around her waist. Then she walked to the shore. The sea was not calm. The swells were colossal, mountains of dark water rising and falling in a sickening rhythm. It was chaos, but it was a predictable chaos. Stepping into the surf was a shock that stole her breath. The cold was a physical blow. She waited out until the churning water was at her waist. Then she leaned forward and began to swim. The journey was a blur of brutal, repetitive motion. The world dissolved into a tunnel of gray water and gray sky. Time ceased to exist. There was only the next stroke, and the one after that. She focused on her father's lessons. Stay parallel to the swells. Use their energy, don't fight it. An hour in, a long, dark shape slid through the water beneath her. A telephone pole, torn from the shore? Or one of the landlords? She screamed into the water, the sound lost to the sea, and kicked harder, fueled by a fresh surge of terror. On the mainland, Sarah, her face pale under the fluorescent lights of St. Jude's, walked down the hallway of the 3rd floor, her heart hammered against her ribs. She saw the red box on the wall. With a trembling hand, she pulled the fire alarm. The effect was instantaneous. A deafening klaxon began to shriek. Red lights flashed. Doors opened, staff pouring into the halls with a practiced, urgent confusion. In that chaos, a figure slipped through a side service entrance. Soaked, shivering, with wild eyes and seaweed in her hair, Maya Castillo moved like a wraith through the hospital she used to work in. Her old ID card, miraculously, still worked on the door to the pharmacy wing. The main pharmacy door was ajar, a requirement during a fire alarm. She saw the specialized refrigeration unit, its digital display glowing, and inside, a small, clear box, Castello, L, Neurogenics 5. Her hands, numb with cold, fumbled with the latch. She grabbed the box. It felt colder than the ocean. Turning to leave, she almost ran headlong into Dr. Alistair Finch. He was in his element, barking orders, a general in a war of his own making. "Containment protocols. I want a full sweep of the wing. Check the server room." His eyes swept over Maya for a fraction of a second. He saw a drenched, terrified woman in a hoodie, clutching a small box to her chest. He registered her only as a panicking civilian, another piece of chaos to be managed. "Ma'am, you need to evacuate with the others," he said dismissively, pointing down the hall before turning his attention back to his staff. He had no idea he was speaking to the ghost who had just breached his fortress. He had no idea he was looking at the woman whose name the entire world would know by nightfall. Maya didn't wait. She fled, melting back into the chaos and out into the storm. She met Sarah on the desolate beach, a frantic, tearful exchange in the wind. The precious box was sealed in the dive bag. The seals were checked, then double-checked. "Go," Sarah whispered, hugging her tight. "Just go, Maya." Maya nodded, her face a mask of grim determination. She turned and walked back into the raging sea. The swim to the mainland had been fueled by desperation. The swim back was fueled by hope. And it was going to be infinitely worse. Hell had a temperature, and it was 48 degrees Fahrenheit. The return swim was a descent into a new dimension of agony. The eye of the storm had passed. The hurricane was regaining its strength, its winds tearing at the surface of the water, whipping the swells into a frenzy of jagged peaks. Maya's body, already depleted, began to fail her. The initial adrenaline had burned away, leaving a deep, gnawing exhaustion. Her strokes became ragged, her kicks weaker. The cold was no longer just a sensation. It was a poison seeping into her core, slowing her thoughts, dulling her senses. Hypothermia was setting in. For Leo, the mantra was faint now, a flickering candle in the storm of her mind. A memory surfaced. Her father, standing on the sunny pier, years ago. "Don't fight the ocean, Mija. You'll lose every time. You become part of it. Feel its rhythm. Let it carry you." She stopped trying to power through the waves. She relaxed her body, timing her breathing to the rise and fall of the swells. She became a piece of driftwood with a purpose. It was a subtle shift, but it saved her. Her energy, what little was left, was now used for propulsion, not for fighting. The world was pain and water, and the steady, reassuring bump of the dive bag against her hip. She lost all track of time. It could have been an hour. It could have been a lifetime. Then, through the spray and the rain, she saw it. A darker smudge against the gray sky. The cliffs of Sandcinder Island. Relief surged through her, a warmth that fought back the cold. She kicked harder, a final, desperate burst of energy. She was 20 yards from the shore when a rogue wave, bigger and more violent than the rest, rose up behind her like a liquid wall. She had no time to react. It picked her up, suspended her for a heart-stopping second, and then threw her forward like a rag doll. Her world exploded in a starburst of pain as her left shoulder smashed against a submerged rock. She cried out, the sound ripped away by the wind. The wave receded, dragging her back, but she clawed at the rocky beach, her fingers raw, her nails tearing. She dragged herself out of the surf, a half-drowned creature of pure will, and collapsed onto the black sand. For a moment, she lay there, gasping, the world spinning. Then, panic shot through her. The bag. She fumbled with the clips, her fingers stiff and useless. Finally, she got it open. Inside, nestled in its protective casing, the vial of Neurogenics V was intact. A sob of pure, unadulterated relief escaped her lips. She was found moments later by a small group of islanders, a volunteer search party who had heard from Dr. Evans that she was missing. They looked down at the battered, bleeding woman on the beach, and then at the dive bag clutched in her hand, and they understood. They wrapped her in their own coats and carried her, half-conscious, back to her house. Inside, by the soft glow of lantern light, the world fell away. There was no storm, no ocean, no bureaucracy. There was only her brother, sleeping fitfully on the sofa, and the medicine that was his only chance. Her training took over. Despite the searing pain in her shoulder and the violent shivering of her body, her hands were steady. She drew the clear liquid into a syringe. She swabbed Leo's small arm. She found the vein. With a final, silent prayer, she pushed the plunger. She watched the life-saving fluid enter his system. She looked at the sat phone. 12 hours left in the window. She had made it. The syringe slipped from her numb fingers and clattered to the floor. The strength that had carried her across 7 miles of ocean hell finally deserted her. She slumped into a chair and let the darkness take her. On the mainland, the story was just beginning. Officer Ben Carter, unable to shake the feeling of dread, had made a few calls. He learned of a fire alarm and a minor security breach at St. Jude's. He learned from a frantic nurse named Sarah that Maya had made it back. He connected the dots. Then he heard the official story taking shape. St. Jude's and Viridian were preparing a joint statement about the theft of an experimental drug by an unstable and distraught family member. Something inside him snapped. He picked up his personal cell phone and dialed a number he hadn't used in years, a reporter at a major San Diego news outlet. "Mark, it's Ben Carter. You're not going to believe the story I have for you. And they're trying to bury it. They're going to call her a criminal. But she's a hero. Her name is Maya Castillo. And she swam." The local news story, posted online under the headline, "Desperate Sisters Impossible Swim, Nurse Braves Hurricane for Brothers Meds," was a spark in the digital darkness. It was picked up by a national news aggregator, then by a major blogger. Within an hour, the hashtag began to trend on Twitter, Swim for Leo. It was no longer a local story. It was a global phenomenon. People shared Maya's nursing school graduation photo, which Sarah had provided. They shared photos of the hurricane's terrifying satellite imagery. They contrasted it with the cold, corporate statements from St. Jude's and Viridian. The rage bait that Maya had experienced personally now became the collective rage of millions. The hospital and the pharmaceutical company were buried under an avalanche of public fury. Their carefully crafted narrative had been obliterated by a simple, powerful truth. The story moved at the speed of light, from phone screens in coffee shops to the televisions of the powerful. In Washington, D.C., an aide at the Pentagon saw the hashtag trending and clicked a link. He read the story, his eyes widening. He walked briskly into his boss's office. "General, you need to see this." Within the hour, the Secretary of the Navy was being briefed. The optics were a public relations nightmare for every official agency that had said no, but a golden opportunity for a show of decisive, compassionate force. The American public was incensed that a lone young woman had been forced to do what the combined might of the U.S. government and a multi-billion-dollar corporation would not. Commander Eva Rostova received a call from a rear admiral she had only ever met once. The voice on the other end was grim. "Commander, give me your full report on the Castillo case, and don't leave anything out." She recounted her conversation with Maya, her voice filled with professional regret and a new, profound respect for the woman she had turned away. She confirmed that the storm, while weakening, still made the channel impassable for any conventional aircraft or vessel. The admiral was silent for a moment. "Thank you, Commander. Stand by." The Secretary of the Navy made one more call, directly to the commander of the Pacific Submarine Force. The conversation was brief. "I don't care how you do it. Get a medical team and whatever they need to that island. Now." 48 hours after Maya Castillo's ordeal began, an old fisherman on the western shore of San Cinder Island, checking his lobster pots, saw something that made him drop his binoculars. It rose from the churning gray sea without a sound, a long, impossibly large shape of black steel, shedding water from its hull like a whale breaking the surface. It was a Los Angeles-class nuclear attack submarine, the USS Pasadena. It surfaced less than half a mile from the shore, its sail tower dwarfing the angry waves. Hatches opened. Sailors in full storm gear emerged, their movements crisp and efficient. They deployed inflatable Zodiac boats into the turbulent water. A specialized pediatric neurological team from Balboa Naval Medical Center, carrying cases of advanced diagnostic equipment, was loaded onto the first boat. Commander Rostova was on that boat. She had insisted. She found Maya on the porch of her small house, wrapped in a thick wool blanket, a mug of tea steaming in her hands. She was watching the impossible sight in the bay, her face pale but her eyes clear. Rostova walked up the steps, her own uniform soaked with sea spray. She stopped before Maya, the station commander who had said no, facing the nurse who had refused to hear it. "Ms. Castillo," Rostova said, her voice thick with emotion. "Maya, we came to help." She gestured out towards the submarine, a monument of steel and state power that had been moved by the actions of one woman. The world heard you." Maya looked from the commander's face to the incredible vessel, then back towards the door of the house, where Leo was sleeping, his tremors gone, his breathing deep and even for the first time in weeks. A single tear traced a clean path through the grime and exhaustion on her cheek. It wasn't a tear of sadness or even joy. It was a tear of overwhelming, unbelievable catharsis. The storm was over. In the week that followed, the world realigned itself around Maya's story. The Navy medical team confirmed the Neurogenics V had worked, halting the progression of the Rona. Leo Castillo had a future. The fallout for the antagonists was swift and brutal. Dr. Finch, after a humiliating press conference where he pledged the hospital's full support, was quietly fired. Viridian Pharmaceuticals, its stock price in a nosedive and its brand synonymous with corporate greed, announced a new, fully funded Maya Castillo Compassionate Access Protocol to fast-track drugs in emergency situations. Evelyn Reed was reassigned to a windowless office in their legal department. Officer Ben Carter, the quiet whistleblower, was given a commendation by a police chief who was basking in the reflected glory. Maya was inundated with offers for books, movies, and interviews. She turned them all down. She had not sought fame, only survival. 3 months later, the sky over San Cinder Island was a brilliant, cloudless blue. The sea was calm, sparkling under the California sun. Maya sat on the sand, watching Leo. He was throwing a frisbee for a golden retriever he'd named Sub. He was a little unsteady on his feet, but he was running. He was laughing. On her lap sat a laptop. She was finalizing the charter for a new non-profit organization. She typed the name into the header. The Leo Bridge Foundation. Its mission: to provide the logistical, legal, and financial support to bridge the gap for patients who, like her brother, had fallen into the cracks between corporate policy and human decency. She looked up from the screen, at the impossible, beautiful sight of her brother playing on the beach. Then she looked out at the ocean. It was no longer a monster. It was a path, a distance she had crossed. She had not conquered it. Her father was right. You don't conquer the ocean. You become part of it. You let it carry you where you need to go. Her journey hadn't ended on that shore. It was just beginning.